again, folks. Welcome to the next thrilling and exciting episode in my ongoing brake system overhaul on this 2001 Triumph Sprint ST 955i. I finished with the front brake calipers and redone those. I'm moving on to the rear brake calipers. So I don't know if you can see from there, but they're inside, behind the wheel, behind the silencer. So the first job for today is the silencer has to come off. Then I'm going to undo the lock nut on the rear wheel, get the rear wheel off so I can access the calipers. And yeah, I'll be removing them, of course, and doing the same overhaul job as I did on the front calipers. I'll get to it. Okay, the silencer's held on in two places. It's got a retaining bolt here onto this bracket and a single clamp bolt here. There's a little retaining clip or bracket that holds it to the pipe. Quite conveniently, I need an 11 and a 12 millimeter wrench for here. And then before I take that one totally off the bracket on the bottom, I need a 13 and a 14. Okay, that one's loose enough. Now I can take this one fully off up the front. And I can withdraw this beautiful big original chrome silencer or stainless steel silencer. I mean, I really like it. I know lots of people whack on an aftermarket silencer to make their bike sound nice and loud, but I love the look of this I love the look of this original one on the Triumph. It's to my liking. Okay, just weasel this one off a little bit. There we are. I'll put her out of the way somewhere so she doesn't get scratched. This rear wheel nut is going to challenge the resourcefulness of your workshop. You need it's a 46mm socket. She's a big old socket. In my case, it's a 3/4 inch drive on it, so I needed a 3/4 to 1/2 inch drive adapter. But in any case, that rear wheel, not surprisingly, is held on pretty tight. It's 110 Newton meters, so it's a bit of a big nut it's a big force you need to apply to take off. If you notice me using a torque wrench to take it off and thinking, what the hell is he doing using a torque wrench to do this? This is an old dead torque wrench of mine that just has a bit of leverage, so that's why I'm doing it. Okay, so the first element, there's a little retaining clip here. You just sort of need to pull out, and you can take that off by hand. Then we need to get our socket onto there. Put the bike into gear. Put the bike into gear. And lean on this guy a bit. There we go. Okay, that's that one. So just keep a watch of the order of which things come off here. There's obviously this retaining nut. So there's a little washer of some kind there, a flat washer. Next, and like this conical dish-shaped retainer there as well. Once those three are out of the way, just get a good grip on your wheel. And I'm hoping that I can weasel it out here behind my touring pack bracket, and I don't have to take that off as well. Goodness. Very, very tight fit. What am I going to do there? Looks like I might need to take this thing off. Yep, that is a real nuisance. I cannot get this rear wheel off past my touring mounting bracket here, so I'm going to have to take that off as well. So I'll just sit the wheel back on there for the moment and I'll take that off. Okay, I guess that's what's known in the trade as a genuine pain in the ass. I have to take this thing off. Nonetheless, I do want to get the wheel off, so off it comes. A few little screws here. It's not difficult, it's just a nuisance. It sort of makes it a particular hassle if you have to get the wheel off when you're touring, I guess. I always have a habit of when I take a nut out and remove something, I put the nut or the screw back in the exact place where it was so I don't lose it or forget in which hole it went. That's a 12mm nut there. Okay, there's a couple of washers there. I just might stick that straight back through there so I know where it goes. And also the order of the washers. And you know, if I'm lucky I can just bend this back out of the way. That should do the trick. I'll be able to get access to it there. And go back to the original project of whipping the wheel off. And there we go. Off she comes. Okay, so that gives us good or relatively good access, I guess, to the rear caliper. So it's mounted on a bracket, so we need to undo this nut here. There's one right over the other side here, which I'll try and show maybe through here. Yeah, I think you can see it. It's the same one on the other side. So they're both 14mm. Yeah, even with the wheel off, access is not so good, but that'll be fine. I'll get in there and get those off. They're 14mm nuts, by the way. Okay. Just crack the other one. Well, I can certainly say the access to the front caliper is much easier than the back one. Anyway, that's how it is sometimes, I guess, with the design of these things. You don't at least have to be quite as much of a contortionist as you need if you're going to be a Honda mechanic, at least for some of the new, more sports-related four-cylinder ones that I've had before this bike. Okay, that's number one. There's no washers there. The last one here. You know what, before I take that out, I just might undo the banjo bolt there, I think. So, and just crack that loose. So that's got him. So yeah, definitely one of the downsides of a second-hand bike. That banjo bolt there was burred as all hell. I've had to use an extractor socket to get that out, but that's loosened now. So I'll continue and pull out the other remaining caliper bolts, clamping bolts, and we're on our way. Okay, so there she is. Now, with the help of a little rag here, I'll undo that banjo bolt and we'll disconnect the brake line. Wonderful. And I'll hang that guy up as well just to get him out of the way for now. Okay. Okay, the rear caliper, here it is. The astute amongst you might have noticed that I didn't take advantage of using the actual brake pressure in the line to displace the pistons. So I'm sort of stuck in that sense, having to, and I've still actually got the pads left in there, so I'm stuck with having to displace them myself. which I'll do shortly. The first thing I'm going to do is just tip out any brake fluid I can for now. Just let that drain a bit. Put that to the side. So the rear brake's a little bit different to the front caliper in that there's 2 pistons only on one side. So it's a moving caliper, and basically those pistons force a plate against a fixed side of the caliper over here. So you've got a disc pad on this side, and then these calipers, when you apply the brake, the pressure comes through and the pistons force this plate out onto the disc, and hence apply the friction that stops it. So I'll start by just cracking these ones here. Once again, I didn't crack them while it was still mounted either. There just wasn't enough room there. So I'll just take this little cap off. Okay, these little guys here are the 2 pad pins. So they're a 5mm hex head, so I'll just place those. So yeah, you push the pads up from underneath to take a bit of pressure off the pins so they can be extracted. Similarly for this one here, crack him off. That's generally just easier to pull off the ratchet and actually just wind it by hand. Once again, push the pads up from underneath, take the pressure off. That's it. Okay, so the 2 pad pins are out. So, like the front caliper, there's plenty of wear left in both those discs. Both those pads. These gouges in the pad are an indicator of when it's worn down past a serviceable limit. When that's worn down to the bottom of the groove, they need replacing, but there's plenty of meat left on those. So, okay, with that out, with the pins out, you can just slide the bracket out like this, I hope, I expect. There we are. So the bracket just slides out. And there we have the caliper itself. Now it's pretty dirty down there. I'm going to pull that pad spring out. Give that all a bit of a clean up down in there, so the pad spring goes in like that. That way. Okay, next I'm just going to go with giving the outside side of the whole caliper and the bracket here a good clean up, and then we'll have a look what I've got in this little TRK braking seal kit. Just to clean it up, I guess, so you're just not dealing with a dirty piece of goods. Okay, I'm going to use the same method to extract these pistons. Inserting a little socket like that into the piston and an extension bar in there as well, so that you get a good seal, and then basically you just turn and let. And you can see that coming out quite nicely there. So he's about to extract. I might be able to even get him out by hand there now. There we are, that's piston number 1. I'll do the same again. And they're moving quite smoothly, so don't think you're going to find anything too bad in here. They're nowhere near as stuck as a couple of the ones in the front calipers were. There we are. Okay, there we have it. The second caliper's out. I can say thank you to my little socket set there, and we can now pour out any remaining brake fluid that we can get out of the system. Okay. And in the same way as with the front caliper, I'll just use a little pick here to help me get out my dust seals. Just displace them out of the hole. So dust seal number 1, and the second one deeper down there, the oil seal, or the pressure seal I should say. So once you displace it at one point, it's pretty easy to pull it out all the way around then. Okay, there's that pressure seal. Dust seal and pressure seal. Okay, so there we are. There's a little bit of gunk down there. So cleaning time again now within the cylinders, and then once we've got that sort of cleaned up, we'll look at what we've got in this new seal pack from TRK Braking, and set about replacing the bits and pieces that need replacing before we put it back together. That brake cleaner's coming to the end of its life. Main thing is in the grooves where you're putting the new seals, just get in there and really clean it out so there's no gunk and rubbish behind where the seals are going to go. And you also want to, if possible, just see if we can try and run just brake cleaner right through the whole system and flush it out. So here's the entry from the banjo bolt of the brake hose. Just brake it straight through and it just blasts it right out. It's a bit like on the front calipers. It's a combination of using your brake cleaner, a toothbrush, and some toweling to get all the grime and the grot out of there. So, and while we're in the cleaning business, once we're happy that's pretty well tidied up, we'll set that aside, and I'll get to work on the pad spring. Always needs a bit of a clean up, gets covered in brake dust. And I just sort of get some great satisfaction out of seeing a pad spring go from being just absolutely dust covered to shiny and silvery again. Sort of, I don't know, I like it. There we are. And once again, don't forget, if anything is not quite moving with the just the brake fluid alone, you can just get a little bit of auto sol onto it and that'll cut into it much nicer and leave it looking like a new one. Dob of auto sol as close as this toothbrush is ever going to get to toothpaste again, I suspect. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Give that a blast off, and that's done. There we have one nice new clean looking pad spring. Okay, let's do some of the other components. Lovely. The brake pads themselves, or maybe I just might give it a bit of a clean on the outside here, but it doesn't need too much. Once again, as I mentioned in considerable detail in my video on the front calipers, make sure you don't use any oil-based products in your cleaning of the brake fluid, or even any water, of the brake components or any water. Just some of this ethanol-based brake cleaner is by far the best stuff. It evaporates, it doesn't leave any residues. And finally, I think the pistons themselves. Just move this out of the way so I can put a bit of pressure on these ones. Same process as we did with the pistons on the front cylinder. Get in with brake fluid first to get the majority of it off, and if you can't get it all off, we'll just use a little bit of Autosol, because these have to be a lovely polished finish so they slide frictionlessly on the seals. It's looking pretty good. Just might put a little bit of Autosol down and get a final polish all over. Okay, well everything's cleaned up nicely here. The bore, the cylinder bores, the pistons, everything's in good condition. The pads have got plenty of meat on them. The pin is looking like the day it was bought. The slider pins are all in good condition. So look, there's more detail on my first video on the front brakes, but when you're cleaning up brake components, you need to use some brake and parts cleaner. It's basically an ethanol based liquid that will dry very quickly and won't leave any residue. And a good toothbrush to do some scrubbing. Mind you, I won't be using that on my teeth ever again, but I do clean that up with brake cleaner each time that gets all that black stuff out. And the other thing, if there's any grime and stuff, particularly on the edge of pistons and that you can't remove, a good product is the old Autosol. It's been around forever. It's an alloy polish, but it's really very good for cleaning up brake components. Just one thing to remember, after you've polished something up with Autosol, make sure you wash it off to get rid of any residues with the brake cleaner. Okay, so all the bits and pieces are ready to go back together. That brings us to the new seal pack that I bought here from TRK. So I'll just tip that out and have a look what's in it. So obviously I've got the 2 sets of piston seals and dust covers. We have some more boots for the slider pins, so it's those 2 there. That'll be good, although I must admit these ones look in pretty good condition. But we've got a new kit, we're going to replace them. The bleeder valve, that's going to be replaced also, and the cap, I won't need that little one. That's a banjo bolt crush washer. There's a couple of them there actually, but I won't need them because I've actually got new banjo bolts with the new brake lines that I've just bought, but that's for another video. And they've given us some red rubber grease here. I've actually got my own red rubber grease here. Just a word on that, once again there's more details in the first video I did on the front brake calipers. But you don't want to use any lithium-based greases around rubber parts. They degrade rubber and they actually react with brake fluid as well. So you want to, the ideal grease to use with brake components is red rubber grease. You can, I think, use a silicone grease. It certainly won't degrade the rubber seals, However, I think it's a little bit more likely to actually interact with the .4 brake fluid and have some breakdown components there you don't want circulating around in your fluid. But this stuff is spot on. That's why with all the seal kits they give you a little pack of red rubber grease there. Okay, so that's it. I think the next step is that I start to reassemble these and torque them up, and we'll get it back on the bike. Okay, where are we going to start here? Notice I've cleaned myself up since I was washing. It's always good to start with nice clean hands and that when you're actually reassembling things. I'm going to start by pulling out this slider pin there and getting rid of the old boots off the calipers, off the caliper. So this boot here just slides straight through this gap here. I think you just sort of pull it through like that from memory. That's right, so that just pops through like that. But the old ones, we'll put them over there with the old seals. So I might start by reinstalling the boot. This is where we might need a little bit of red rubber grease to help us through. So you're unlike the front calipers, which are a fixed caliper design, this one is called a floating single piston or floating single-sided piston caliper. So you've got these basically slider pins that sit in here like this, and there's another one in there, and they slide so that as the brake pressure is exerted via the pistons, the whole caliper can actually move like this against the bracket here. So the whole caliper moves. It's not fixed like the front brakes are. Okay, so let's see if I can just get a little bit of red rubber grease on here to help me get this boot in. Just a little bit of a smear of red rubber grease here can help you get that boot pushed through. There we are, it's just popped right through there now. Nice new boot on that slider pin. So this slider pin on this side has a little groove around here like this. I'm just going to give it a nice little bit of red rubber grease. It's actually really good just to preserve the rubber as well. And that will just slot nicely in to the housing there for the sliding pin on that side. There we are. Now of course the last component of that is to make sure that the sliding pin itself is nicely lubricated. Particularly parts that are going to interact with the rubber. Looks pretty good. We'll slot that one in. There we are. Just give it a bit of a clean up. There we are. That looks pretty good. Looks like a bought one. So basically the actual caliper has to be sliding freely like that. And similarly here, we'll re-grease this slider pin, which I cleaned up before. And again, he can do the same. And just make sure you return the slider pin so there's a little flat spot there so that it slots into the right place. So that can be turned. Okay, that's over, and we can install the little securing pad there. Now it's actually only finger tight last time I had it done up. Okay. But you know what? I'm not going to install that until after I put the seals in the caliper. Okay, we might just take out this little the cap off the bleeder valve and whip him off. Add him to the discarded pile and get our new bleeder valve in there. I won't torque him up because we're actually going to be using him pretty soon when we bleed these brakes. But I'll pop on the new cap there for now. Okay, looking good. Really remains, I guess, for us to install the dust and pressure seals, which we'll do now. Once again, like we did with the front wheel calipers, a little bit of brake fluid actually in round the grooves where we're going to put the seals. And a little bit of red rubber grease. So firstly I'll do the pressure seal, a smear of red rubber grease around these guys. Don't want too much, definitely just a smear. Once again, pretty soon I'll look like I've been eating mulberries or raspberries. So just smear some red rubber grease over there. It's a school of thought that says you don't even need to smear it at all, just use brake fluid. In the same process, push those down till you feel it into the groove, and then just run the other part around with your fingers. That's gone in nicely there. Same process with the dust seal. Now that dust seal's right up near the top of the bore, so you'll find the little groove just inside. Hold it in one place, then just run your fingers around and it'll slot in. That's it, it's gone in there quite nicely. It's going to use a little bit of a smear of red rubber grease on the inside. And I guess while I'm at it, I might just do the same with the piston on that side. So just a smear all around with red rubber grease. That's it. Once again, just position the piston evenly over the top of the bore and just downward pressure, and there we are. It's gone in there sweetly. We'll just clean up that bit of grease. Might get a new bit of paper towel because that's getting a bit mulberry looking. Okay, so that one's gone in there quite nicely. Looks like I bought one. Okay, the next one. It's up or down's exactly the same, it's a square cut. And then, just with one finger, find the groove, there it is, it's slotted in, and then run your finger around till it just slots in. And a little bit of grease around there for good measure. And the dust seal. Okay, same thing. It's right near the top of the bore. Just slot it in nicely there, so just sort of feel as you push it in and it'll pop its way in as you run your finger around. So she's gone in beautifully there. Last little smear of red rubber grease around both the seals. Just keep it sparse, because you don't want big glugs of red rubber grease. Even though it's not interacting with your brake fluid, you really don't want big globs of it moving around in the brake fluid as you're conveying your pressure down. There's just no need for it. So just a smear. And that can sit on the top, line up straight. Once you've got it straight, just some downward pressure. and in it goes. Okay, and the last little clean up there and we're almost in business. Looking like I bought one. And even though the seals, even though the pistons were running very freely in there, they're definitely going to be running freely from now with a clean out and some new seals and grease. Okay. Okay, well, I think we're pretty well ready to put this back on the bike. Just one point here. I'll just grab my little pick. I just want to make this boot that you put on the slider pin here. Just make sure that little boot, if you can see there, has a little lip on the actual slider pin. Just make sure that boot clips over into that little groove, so it stays on the pin as it comes in and out. And the other one here is, you'll see here, there's a little flat section on the top of that slider pin. It aligns with that flat section on the actual bracket, so when you're putting that together, I think the easiest way is to manually turn the slider pin so the bracket is horizontal, and then that will just click over when you... I've popped that out of the boot on the other side, so that's slotted through. You just want to, you can even do it with your fingers. There we are, just slotted that little edge of the boot over the groove. So, and I guess last thing, just check that the slider pins are actually going in and out easily. You can see if I push it in, it just sort of comes back. It looks very nicely lubricated. Brand new boots, clean pistons, change seals, everything else is tidied up. New nipple. I think we're pretty well ready to go back onto the bike. I'll just put this little slider pin bolt here. That was only done up sort of hand tight when I took it off. I'll just tighten that a little bit more than that. I think it's actually 22 Newton meters or something like that. It's meant to be tightened to. Actually, I better torque it up, didn't I? Yep, that's a 22 Newton meter one. I'll just grab my torque wrench and torque it up. What else? Apart from that, time to put the pads back in. Now, there's a little bit of, what would you call it, chipping or wearing away of some of the pad material right at the end. I think the general rule is if there's no big cracks going right through the actual pad material, no cracks going right through the pad material, you're pretty well right to keep using it, particularly when there's so much meat left on the pad as that. And the other pad doesn't have that, just a little bit of material loss around the side, but I think that's all fine. So it's 22 Newton meters for that slide pin cap. Okay, let's just torque this guy up. There we are. Okay, and the bracket's moving nicely there, so I'm happy with that. Okay, the pins. Sorry. Firstly, the next step is to install the pad spring on the bottom. Just make sure that clicks into place. That's it. Now the pads. The pad springs click down nicely in place there. This little guy is the first one that goes over. You can align the actual holes there with the actual pad pinholes in the bottom. So I'll stick that guy in there first. And then this guy goes in this way. Sits around that little hook, goes around the slider pin bolt nut there. And that's where our disc runs in between. Okay, so with the pads in place there, let's go ahead and put the actual pad springs through. The pad pins through. Just need to get those guys back in place. Now, just to get the pad bolt going through, you might need to just compress the pad spring a little bit there by pushing down on that's it, pushing down on the pad spring. So similarly, when I put this side through, I'll put him through, just push down on that back disc to compress the pad spring so you can feel it going through the hole, and there we go, it's gone straight through. So just a matter then of torquing these guys up. Now what are they torqued up to? Retaining pins are 20 Newton meters, so we'll just do them hand tight first. The pads are officially retained, so we'll just get our torque wrench here, set it to 20 Newton meters. Okay. If you remember back on my first, on the front caliper clip, I said these are very easy to torque up when they're actually on the bike. That's true, but the access on the rear caliper's poor. So you're sort of tied to doing them here. Okay, it's 20 on that side. And 20 on that side. Okay, well, I think we've got a nice clean looking, newly overhauled rear brake caliper that's ready to go back on the bike. So let's go and do that. Okay, let's get this little caliper back on the bike. So make a bit of room here for the actual discs by pushing the pad apart, make room for the disc, and then it's just a simple matter of sliding that over. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Make some room for the discs, then we slip it over, noting which side the bracket is on, and then we'll just try and locate. Okay, that's that one started. I'll see if I can get the one on the front started. That's got him. Okay, get them up finger tight. And then we'll torque them up. So these are 40 Newton meters. Like I was saying before, always good practice just to do it sort of finger tight or hand tight. And then we'll get the torque wrench on there as well. Mind you, I'm not sure I'm going to get the torque wrench on there. There's not enough room. It's bloody congested space here. No. I'll do that up hand tight with here, and then I'll see what options I've got for the torque wrench. You'd think taking the silencer off and the wheel off, you'd have good access to the damn caliper bolts, wouldn't you? But no. So, yep, not one of your highlights on the bike triumph, I'd have to say. Anyway, it is what it is. I'll take the good with the bad. Okay. So I'll grab my large torque wrench, setting at 40 Newton meters. So there's 40 Newton meters on the torque wrench. I think I'll be able to get it onto this big guy, but onto this outside one. There we are. But on this inner one, I think I've got Buckley's chance. So I'm just going to have to tighten him up to what I think feels like around 40 Newton meters. Okay, that's going to be it. Okay, there she is on, job done. A newly overhauled floating type single-sided rear brake caliper with all new piston seals, cleaned, re-greased, new sliding pin boots, and the sliding pins all re-greased. That should be right for another 4 or 5 years, I guess. Maybe it'll even do me out on this bike, we'll see. Anyway, so I've now got the rear caliper done and the front calipers done. I have actually received my new brake lines, so new brake lines from Hell Performance. So the next step will be actually to connect up and run the new brake lines, bleed them up, get all the air out of them, and I can pretty well draw a line under the braking system on the bike. I'll be a lot more confident that it'll hold me in good stead on the road, and I also know in a precise way then when my next service intervals will be for changing seals and all that. Anyway, if you're in the process of doing your brakes yourself and that's how you've come across this video, I hope that video has been useful for you. If you've got any things that you've come across that you found worthwhile, or you didn't know, or you think maybe I don't know, please share them in the comments. Really like to hear what you've got to say. And apart from that, I wish you all the best. Happy motorcycling, and I hope this video has been some use to you. I'll catch you next time.